Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 174 of the Citrix Session. I'm your host, Bill Sutton, along with a few other folks that have joined today. First off, Andy Whiteside, you want to introduce yourself really quickly, Andy, and say hello?
Just glad to be back on, Bill. Excited about talking about what Citrix is doing to invest in the product further, and want people to know that we're a partner that's out here to be proactive about getting the message out and here to help. And we do all kinds of madness around here to try to help raise the bar around the Citrix space.
Yes, we do. Absolutely. Also from Citrix, it's Geremy Meyers and Todd Smith. I'm going to say hello real quick. Just reintroduce yourselves for those who may not know who you are.
Sure. So I'm Geremy Meyers. I lead a group of ATSs on the East Coast, and I have had the pleasure of working with XenTegra for many, many moons. And it's actually really good to see Andy and Todd back. So this might be the first session we've done all year with the squad.
I think it is.
I was just going to say that Happy New Year, and then Bill reminded me that it's actually February. So I missed the entire month of January with you guys, and I'm glad to be back. But I'm Todd Smith. I'm the ATS covering the Canadian public sector accounts, which includes some of the healthcare organizations in Western Canada. So if you're listening out there, glad you were able to join us.
By the way, Todd, so is this your first winter with the Maine, the field, the acreage in Maine, the house in Maine?
Yeah, it's technically it's my third winter because I bought it in December of 2022. So, but this is the first year that I've actually had some equipment to be able to actually move snow around, which we've actually got a lot of, and got a chance to. The house plans are progressing nicely, though.
Oh, I can't imagine what you're having to drive to blow some snow. Let's leave it at that.
Wow. Very good. Well, it's great to have the whole gang here today. So we're going to cover the blog article entitled Introducing Session Remote Start, Faster Logons, More Productivity by Manjanatha Gali from Citrix. So this is a feature that I can remember probably a decade ago, maybe 15 years ago at a law firm talking about this, the holy grail of being able to allow your badge, your HID badge or some other type of badge that unlocks the door to log you into your Citrix session and make it available to you when you come in or when you sit at your desk for a reconnect, which I think is what this is all about to some degree, right, Geremy or Todd?
It is, but you know what? Since you go way back, Bill, let's talk about that real quick. So we've had a feature that's been in the product for many, many years called Session Pre-Launch.
Yep.
But of course, that worked as you logged into receiver on whatever device you're on. That's when it would kick off your pre-launch session. Basically, what it's doing is it's abstracting the logging in. So of course, you sit down at a desk, you log in for the first time, you got to wait for Windows to log in. Now, what's great about a physical local PC is you can see that entire login process.
Right.
You see the whole, what do we call it? Was that the Gina? It wasn't just the Gina, but it was the entire login process.
Yeah, Gina,
front and center,
profile load, everything.
Hey, listen, you got some feedback, right? So you knew what was going on, even if you didn't like the fact it took 3 minutes, but at least you knew. Now, in our Citrix session, a lot of times we abstract that so you don't see all those things happening. So sometimes folks would click an icon and they would wait 3 minutes to log in, but nothing would show up on the screen. And then magically, just about the time you forgot about it, boom, your seamless session would pop up and off you went, right? So we introduced this feature called pre-launch. The idea was as you logged into Citrix Receiver at the time, it would kick off in the background the session, get that guy booted up and leave it in a disconnected state. So when you finally clicked the icon in receiver or workspace, it would pop right up. So that was the feature that's been around for a long time. But Todd, this is different. Do you want to tell us what's different about it?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that's different here is the ability to actually interact with other technologies through our API stack. So as an example, right, you badge in using an HID card or a proximity badge or something like that. That interaction will actually start up your workspace or start up your desktop or your application stack. So by the time you get to your desk, it's up and running, right? So the benefit here is that you're not having to wait to get to your physical PC to actually start your workday, which can save considerable amount of time, depending on where you're at and things like that. But it's once again allowing you to connect that physical security layer into something that's going to allow you to work faster or get working faster.
Right. So because it's API driven and not me logging into workspace, which means I've got to be in front of some sort of device, I mean, that opens up so many possibilities, right? So I'm just thinking like tap and go, touch and go, badge into an office, anything that can leverage an API and kick off that access is conceivably something that could kick it off. So in this article here, the way to describe it is, maybe you walk into the building and you've badged into the first floor, maybe you're on the fifth floor, you badge into the first floor, just to go through the kiosk. I mean, in my head, I'm thinking just going into the Citrix office. The idea is by the time I got up to my desktop or I've unpackaged my laptop and logged in, my session is already up. It's just in a disconnected state so that when I press, the icon to launch it, boom, I'm in 10 seconds or less. However long it takes to actually broker an HCX connection at that point. I think that's the nirvana Bill's talking about.
Yeah, that's what we talked about a number of years ago with this law firm was, they badge into the garage and then they badge in again at the main floor and the elevator and so forth. And we could leverage one of those badge ins, if you will, to kick off a session. And I think pre-launch was kind of the first evolution of that, but they had that they could do that from their device and log into receiver and log into a desktop. But this is a little bit different, like you said, because it's API driven. It's really before the login per se, before the user enters their password. It's kind of building the session up in the background, right?
Yep. So when I was going through this article, I mean, I think, listen, there's some third-party vendors that could do this, of course, they'll build this right in. I'm just thinking right off the bat, like an Imprivata could do this easily, right? I mean, they're already doing this in some capacity now, but this makes it a little bit easier. But I mean, listen, if you're an IT admin and you've got some scripting chops, you could come up with a workflow that makes sense for maybe what's unique to your business too.
Yeah, I mean, really what this is the problem it's trying to solve is a frustration with login times and users getting frustrated, like you said, with that 3-minute login. And then, of course, when that login takes so long, some folks will pick up the phone and call the support desk and say, I'm still waiting to log in. So that's part of the reason for this. That's not the only reason, but certainly one item is to help reduce user frustration and lost time, right?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, this is not putting lipstick on a pig. Like if it takes a long time to log in, like I think that's something that should be addressed as well. In fact, I think the article talks a bit about listen, scripts that run, GPOs that run. I mean, there's a lot that can be done to just optimize the login process in general. But, just from a workflow perspective, like I think this could easily dovetail into how do we just optimize that user experience for folks trying to get access?
Well, if we have guys out there, our customers, anybody else that's got a minute-long login time, 45 seconds, then we need to be looking at fixing that. And my fear is that people take something like this and they try to make this kind of like you said, lipstick on a pig, trying to mask the fact that they've got issues.
Yeah, we get a lot of what I'd call mini projects where we'll get contact from an existing customer or a new customer saying, look, our login times are ridiculous, 5 minutes or 3 minutes or even 1 minute. Is there anything you can do? And so we'll spend a lot of time, like you were referring to, Geremy, optimizing group policies, looking at the profile load time, which is often the cause. Maybe we're shifting them from a traditional profile management solution to something like FSLogix or CPM, Citrix Profile Management, to help augment or improve the performance. So we spend a lot of time doing that for customers today to try to get the login times down. So I don't know that should stop in the situation of one of these solutions, but certainly helps speed it up a good bit for certain use cases.
Yeah, I think the critical thing here is that it's yet another tool that can be brought in to help solve that problem, right? So if the problem is you need to get your employees productive faster during the day, so think of it as call center employees, shop floor production type of folks, being able to get them to be as productive as possible without having them wait 5 minutes to log into their endpoint, go through that entire process, connect out to their resources, and be able to do that job. I mean, in some cases, 5 minutes a 2-minute cost savings in that, that's production. And it also allows you to have that connection between that physical layer of security as well as the access to their work environment.
Right. So let's talk a little bit next about the article. The article references how the session remote start works. So I don't know that we need to get too terribly technical here, but basically, like Geremy and Todd both mentioned, it leverages APIs for session enumeration and the login and log off process. And like we mentioned, the first element listed in the article here is just-in-time launch. You're leveraging external triggers like a badge scan, a click of a button on a mobile app, things of that nature that generate the API calls that then bring the resources to the ready for the user. Then they simply initiate their logon using their typical normal method, and it connects very quickly because it's just doing a reconnect. The session already exists. It's just doing a reconnect, if you will, to an existing session. And this apparently also can integrate with power management so that you don't have to bring up your VDAs necessarily early. You can initiate the start of the VDA, the virtual desktop or the server hosting your workloads. You can initiate that via the badge scan as well. Any thoughts or additional information on this, Geremy, Todd, Andy?
I mean, so to your point, that's pretty important in the context of, let's just say you're running persistent desktops in like a cloud and you're still trying to manage costs in the cloud, right? So a lot of value there. And that leads right into the fact that this works with both on-premise CVAD as well as the DAS service as well. So it can be integrated regardless of what your architecture looks like. And secondly, it's a service. So there is a downloadable install. You've got to stuff somewhere, run as a service. So that's the thing that's capturing the API calls and feeding that back into your Citrix infrastructure. But like you said, Bill, it's leveraging that power management API to power on and off.
I think one of the other things from a security perspective is a lot of organizations, a lot of my customers, especially in the public sector, customers are adopting not only a badge in to get into the building, but you also have to badge out on a daily basis, right? So this is another way, because it is based on the APIs, you can basically say, not only are we going to set up your environment, get it ready for you when you show up to work, but also it's another way to ensure that the user actually closes down their session, even if they forgot to do it actually at the physical endpoint. You can do that on their way out.
Yeah, it's interesting, Todd. I hadn't actually thought about that, but it does reference that a little bit in here, being able to leverage the log out process, which is equally critical. I mean, obviously, if the user walks away, maybe they don't do a log off, or they just do a disconnect, or just shut the top on their laptop and head out the door. When they badge out, if we can initiate a log off process that would then, in theory, shut down the VDA if it's a virtual desktop, a full blown single session virtual desktop. That certainly could help save money, particularly if you're dealing with a cloud-based environment where you're paying for consumption by the hour. There's a diagram in the blog article that kind of shows visually what this looks like, and essentially the employee badge, like we talked about, the employee badges in. There's the service that Geremy referenced that's running, the session remote start service that then initiates the connection using the scripting to the back end. And then when the user logs in, it's just to reconnect. So it's typically a pretty quick process.
And Geremy, I think we talked about this briefly, and I don't want to go too much in detail, but there's the where's that service running in this solution that's shown here?
So it looks like ideally the recommendation is a separate server, Windows Server OS 2019 or above. Okay. So it's a separate component that you would stick out on the in your infra, and that is what the API calls are going to. So okay. Could be the badge reader, could be whatever it is, but it's talking to that server.
Okay, got it.
Yeah,
well, it's interesting. When I read this article, I went out to the App Store and looked for an app that said remote start, but that's not how it works. You can build your own app, certainly, because it made reference to being able to initiate the login process from a mobile phone. So that may be something as simple as a secure website. It could be an app that was built by the customer that the user clicks at some point. So it doesn't have to be a badge in, badge out. There are other methods. Anything that can generate an API call, a REST API call to the service securely would be sufficient to generate the start event, right?
Correct. The documentation, Bill, I'm not going to have you click out to that just to check it out, but the documentation does a pretty good job of walking through the architecture as well, and in terms of like individual components and what needs to communicate to what. The walkthrough looks pretty good from a just from installation perspective too. It seems fairly straightforward. I think there's listen, anytime you've got a you're talking APIs, you're going to want to secure that, right? So there's some steps that some folks might not have been through before. If you've not had to, slap an SSL cert to protect an API, that is a step just to be aware of, but it looks pretty straightforward. Also works with intra ID, so not just AD. So that means you can integrate this with FAS as well. So it's pretty flexible.
Yep. So there's a quote in here that says with session remote start, session launch times dropped from 60 seconds to under 10, saving 50 seconds per session applied across 2,000 users over a year. This is a resulting savings in a lot of hours, increasing productivity, I'm paraphrasing, and transforming operational efficiency. So there's some real positive impact this can have. But obviously, to Andy's point earlier, understanding what's causing the long login times would still be valuable in helping optimize this process. Any final thoughts on this? There's a video in here as well. There's not much more to cover unless you guys have additional content you want to cover on this topic.
Probably just one last piece. I mean, it is public tech preview right now. So that means PM is literally just wanting folks to roll this out, test it, kind of work with it. The way I understand it is you can roll this out in parallel to what you've got already. So it's easy to test out and bring some users on and not really have it impact production. So listen, if this is useful to you, if this is something you'd like to roll out, I would say go fire it up. And the more folks and feedback we can give PM, the quicker it goes GA.
Absolutely. All right. Any other final thoughts? This is a quick one today, guys.
I just, highlight again, Citrix trying to find ways to solve problems that have not problems, but enable problems, not with the product, but problems within our workflows that we've had for years and years and years. And, continues to just invest in moving the ball forward.
Yeah, I agree completely, Andy.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's a really good point, because the whole premise of this is what is the user experience for the end user, right? And how can we improve that? I mean, at some point, sure, we can do all the back-end administrative things. We can provision here. We can centralize, management, all those sorts of things. But at the end of the day, what feature is just going to improve that user experience for the end user? And this is really what this is built for.
Yeah, you all have been making a lot of enhancements to the product around the end user experience, which, and improving visibility for admins as well into, towards the goal of improving the end user experience. So this just dovetails nicely into a lot of the other things you all been doing over the past year and a half. Really positive stuff. All right. That's all we've got for go ahead.
Sorry. Oh, good stuff. Yeah, that's all I got.
For sure. Good stuff. So, all right. Thank you guys for joining us today.
See you guys again.
We'll be back again next week.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right, guys.